Hi everyone! Today we're going to be talking about shading. What is shading? When shading in art, you're basically coloring in a drawing with varying values to create the illusion that the objects in your drawing are three-dimensional. When we look at an object, say this ping pong ball, we can see that some parts of it are darker than others and some parts are lighter than others. Why does this happen? Light is being blocked by this object. While it creates a highlight on the side closest to the light, the side away from the light falls into shadow. The light also cannot travel beyond the object, so it creates a shadow on the surface that the object rests on. Now, let's look at the different lights and shadows that appear. I just mentioned the highlight, which is the brightest part of an object where the light hits it. There are two basic types of shadows, the form shadow and the cast shadow. The form shadow is on the object, and its darkest part is usually right where the shadow and light meet. The cast shadow is the shadow that is cast by the object onto the table or wherever the object is sitting. There is also sometimes reflected light, which appears on the edge of the object. This is usually due to the light bouncing off the table onto the object, and happens when the table is a lighter color. Alright, so let's get right into sketching and shading. So first, when we are doing a shape, we want to draw out the 2D shape. For some drawing a circle here, you want to make sure it's very light, and go over the outline a couple of times. So I'm going to switch to another pencil here that's darker, so I can do the shadow. You don't have to worry about this right now, I'll talk about it later. So first I just kind of go in and shade. It's pretty simple. I'm going in with the core part of the form shadow to just kind of delineate where the shadow starts. And I'm just kind of scribbling around the edges and inside the shape. Pretty self-explanatory. And I'm just going to fill up the bottom part of where the form shadow is. Now, one thing is I'm not going to completely go too dark to the end of it because I want to make sure there's some reflected light that shows. And I've pretty much finished up with the shadow now. Just going to go over a couple more times to smooth it out. And now I'm going to go into the light part. So of course we have to put in some midtones. I switched to a lighter pencil here as you can probably see the difference between what I'm working on now and what I just finished, the shadow. So for this I'm just doing some scribbles, just filling up the space. Here I'm applying less pressure. Either you want to use a lighter pencil or apply less pressure. I'm just scribbling it in. And I go around the outer edge because the highlight is not going to be at the edge, it's going to be somewhere in the middle of the circle. And here we can kind of see the shape of the sphere is beginning to come out, and I'm just filling in the space. Here you can see that the highlight is becoming more defined. And I'm just trying to smooth it out with the shadow, and I'm also going in a different direction with the lines, so then I can fill up the space between the lines that I just drew. Now I'm going to darken it a little bit, the shadow part, because I'm still not satisfied and I want to create more of a contrast between the midtone and the shadow. And I just kind of smooth out the edge there, so then it's a good smooth transition. Especially since the sphere is round, you want a smooth transition from the midtone to the darker tones. It'll be different if you're doing a cube, but we'll get to that later. Now I'm working on the cast shadow. The cast shadow is basically just the shape, but elongated and more horizontal. Here you can see it's kind of at a diagonal because the light is coming from the front, and the cast shadow goes away from the light. Also, for the cast shadow, it's usually darker near the base of the object and becomes lighter as you go out. So here I'm just working on where it touches the object, And then you can see that it's kind of lighter the object is kind of lighter at the bottom because of the reflected light. I'm just going in and darkening it, and it becomes lighter as I go out. And there you go. It's your first sphere. Next, let's talk about a cube. Spheres are round, so their form shadows are soft and tend to blend into the midtones. However, if you look at this cube, you can see that each side of the cube is a very different value. This is because it has sharp edges and the shadows don't blend. Again, the cast shadow is just an elongated version of the object, kind of flattened on the table. So now let's try drawing a cube. First, I'm going to start with a two-dimensional shape, a square, and again, do the lines very lightly so I can erase them if I mess up or something. Next, I'm going to do diagonal lines to make the cube shape. I start with the one in the middle that's at kind of like a 45-degree angle, and then the next couple are also pretty much at a 45-degree angle. However, it's okay if they kind of slant toward the middle one, because that helps with the perspective. This one also goes kind of toward the middle one, as you can see. They will intersect if you extend them. And then I just connect them with a vertical and a horizontal line. And you have a cube. Next, we're going to shade this in. The light is coming from the top left, and so I'm just going to start with the darkest part, which will be the side that is farthest away from the light. I'm using a darker pencil here again, and just shading it in. I'm just kind of scribbling it in, no real technique or anything. And yeah. Next, I'm going to move on to the middle portion. I'm just kind of start in the corner, and I'm just going to fill the space. As you can see, I'm putting less pressure on it, so I have a lighter value than for the darker part. And yeah, next I'm gonna go to the top part. Here, you don't really have to shade it, because you can obviously see that the three sides are different colors, but I'm just gonna go in with a pretty light pencil here, just to fill it up. Then I'm gonna go over the second part, the side that's facing us, just to make sure it has enough contrast with the top side. Now I'm gonna do the cast shadow. Again, the part that's closest to the cube is the darkest. And I'm just extending it a little bit, fixing the cube so it doesn't look so messy. Alright. And then I'm just going to draw straight lines from the cube so it extends backwards. Again, it's kind of just like a flattened cube on the surface. And now I have the outline that I can go in and color it in. I'm going to use a darker pencil here, and we're going to start pretty dark. One thing I forgot to mention before, I think, is that cast shadows are generally darker than form shadows. So I'm going to start with a pretty dark shade near the base, and then I'm just going to keep with the same pencil, just lightening it as I go out. I'm just going to smooth out the values, and there we go. Now let's talk pencils. Before I mentioned using a darker or lighter pencil, and this is because there are many graphite pencils in a range of values. Here is a set of pencils I have that ranges from 4H to 4B. The pencils in the H range are lighter, and the pencils in the B range are much darker. You can see in the middle that there is a pencil called HB, and the pencils you use in school usually have this value. If you don't have a set of graphite pencils, you're probably holding an HB pencil right now. Of course, you don't have to have a fancy set of pencils, but it makes it much easier to get the value you want when drawing. But keep in mind that it is not necessary, and you can still make art with whatever you have lying around. If you enjoyed this and want more, please consider liking and subscribing, or following our other social media. Thank you, and see you next time. Bye!